This is Stage Left Planet, and I'm your host, Barbara Wimbush. Today's episode is Jerry Springer springing us into what type of future? The Jerry Springer Show had a major impact on society, and it's odd because during the time Jerry Springer Show first began, he competed with shows like Donahue, Oprah, Morton Downey Jr., Richard Bay, many, even, let's see, Lisa. Oh, wow, I used to watch her show. So her name's Lisa. No, Jenny Jones. That's it. Jenny Jones and others, to which he derided for being too sensationalist and basically too trashy, right? But at that time, his platform was more like that of, say, like a morning show, like Good Morning America. That was his platform. It was more akin to that, more akin to being like a milk toast version of Donahue, or like just a really plain show. It was boring, very very boring. And I noticed as he went on, and this is no disrespect to the memory of Jerry Springer, right? Because this episode is coming to you because Jerry Springer passed away today. It's been circulating. It's been in the news that he passed away. But hypocritically, he derided shows like Richard Bay and Morton Downey Jr. And then when those shows got canceled, he changed his platform to be even worse than what they were. It's like his show was like it normalized depravity, dysfunction, and deviance is what his show did. And it was annoying because they would show locally several episodes back to back. The best thing about the show was Steve Wilkos. But to just see people sitting there, fighting and can out, no real, I mean, very little real impactful help came to those people. Just normalizing what, a matter of fact, we could say the Jerry Springer Show is basically the godfather of uh, the grandfather, not the godfather, not the godfather, but the grandfather of world star hip hop, basically. Just the worst type of behavior and representation of people, and it would have done Margaret Sanger there as a eugenicist. It would have done Margaret Sanger very proudly because people such as her love to display, love to cite the worst possible situations or circumstances or behaviors as the norm so that they can support their very extremist views of basically population control via genocide through various forms of genocide. I mean, seriously, like what we are seeing now with various forms of human trafficking through abortion, organ trafficking, and even sex trafficking, and drug trafficking. Those are destructive to human society, to human beings, to the physical and moral, the conscious, the mental health of a society, of a people. It destroys individuals and societies, okay? And Jerry Springer normalized foolishness, basically. I don't mean to disrespect him. This isn't about disrespecting him. This is just telling the truth. I can't say, oh wow, Jerry Springer was so fabulous, so fun. So no. His show was on the air far too long. He should have got canceled at about at least 2 months after he changed his format to foolishness. I enjoyed Richard Bay. I liked him and Jenny Jones. I liked this and Ricky Lake. I liked their show. Here comes Jerry Springer flapping his gums against them. And at least Richard Bay was fun. At least he was fun. So basically, that's all I have to say on it. I hope Jerry Springer repented and turned to Jesus. I really do. I hope he repented, turned to Jesus, and was legitimate and developed a real relationship with God. I truly do, before he left this earth, because he left a lot of foolishness behind him. He created the gateway, the segue. He explored. And now, as a person who had been, I think he was mayor of Cincinnati, he was full well of social problems full well of the dysfunction in society, full well of the dysfunction in society that leads to many social problems, okay? And instead of continuing forth with having a show that uplifted people and inspired people that they could overcome their circumstances, he exploited those people and convinced that he's worse, just as bad as gangster rap music. And I'm just gonna say it. A whole lot of John Singleton movies that introduce counterproductive foolishness and normalize it as if it was black culture, which it is not. Back during the time when movies like Boys in the Hood came out, black people were inspired. They were looking. If they looked at entertainment as an example, they were looking at shows like Family Matters and The Cosby Show, and aspiring to be productive citizens in society and not complacent about changing their situation to gain upward mobility legitimately and honestly through hard work and dedication and the supporting of other people, or doing the best that they could. They were not about normalizing foolishness. That didn't occur. That wasn't like commonplace at that point in history. That become obsolete once the black exploitation movies featuring pimps in the 70s and that foolishness there went out of fashion. You had black people aspiring to be upwardly mobile by legitimate means. They were like called buppies, which are black yuppies, which are people who, you know, they may have been hippies or something like that in the 60s and the 70s, but then once they came into full grown, once they became, got settled and more mature in their 30s and their 40s, they were middle class and middle class and upper middle class. They were middle class, upper middle class, and even those that were poor and the working poor were aspiring to do their best to live legitimate lifestyles and be productive. Okay. John Singleton, right along with Jerry Springer, ushered in hard and this gangster rap stupidity ushered in a lot of counterproductivity and foolishness. It really did. A lot of counterproductivity normalized that. And though there are things I like about Tupac is had made himself the poster child for a thug life that many question, was he ever living? Many people even say he's still living and is an agent for it was an agent for the government to usher in the chaos to destroy the black community from within. It is not even odd that rap itself, and particularly gangster rap, coincided with with the legalization of the privatization of prisons, which began in Tennessee, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in 1984. Let's look that up. I have that noted because I don't want to give you any misinformation. Let's see, privatization. Yeah, I'm gonna look up just a good privatize. It's in my notes. I've written about it several times. Here we go. Yes. Now, let me scroll past this. On mass incarceration, our current president used the drug epidemic to target blacks and poor people to serve longer sentences for trafficking by promoting propaganda that crack is more lethal than cocaine. Blacks and poor people could afford crack for distribution, which I'm not defending that. Not defending that whatsoever. Because number one, drug making, drug dealing, and selling, that is form of kill, which is a form of sorcery, which God says is an abomination. Now, blacks and poor people could afford crack for distribution and sale because it was less expensive than cocaine, which Biden gave lesser sentencing. Yes, Biden gave cocaine lesser sentencing. Now, one has to wonder why. And he even gave this Beyond the Pale speech. Talk about predators beyond the pale. I guess, maybe he was secretly referencing Hunter because, let's face it, the name Hunter, a hunter is a predator. Anywho, um, now, this occurred during the time the number of privatized prisons, his listening to sentence for cocaine use in addicts and selling, that occurred during the time the number of privatized prisons began to increase. These were for profit prisons. The first company to take over a prison was Core Civic in 1984. Core Civic took over a Shelby County, Tennessee prison. Now, the Vox's German Lopez, in their article, Joe Biden, Black Lives Matter, about Joe Biden and Black Lives Matter, shared Jamel Bowie's list at slate.com. For their article, Joe Biden presidential run, why it's a bad idea. And in that article, Jamel Bowie lists the crime acts which Joe Biden wrote and some co-authored with known racists such as Strom Thurmond, and he aligned himself with racists, and particularly anti-black racists, to further his own career. Such that they even told him if they had to vote for a Democrat, it would be him. Now, the first one is the Comprehensive Control Act, which was created in 1984 and spearheaded by Biden and Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina. And it expanded the drug trafficking penalties and federal civil asset forfeiture, which allows police to seize and absorb someone's property, whether cash calls, guns, or something else, without proving the person is guilty of a crime. That's right. Not innocent until proven guilty at all, right? Under the federal equitable sharing program, local and state police get up to 80% of the value of what they seize as funds for their departments, which critics say creates a for-profit incentive to take people's stuff. Then in 1986, Biden sponsored and partly wrote the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 that ratcheted up penalties for drug crimes. It created a big sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine, even though both drugs are pharmacologically similar. Then in 1988, that's right, he's been at it since 1984, not just the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, right? Not just that one, which he partly wrote, and was signed by Bill Clinton, whose wife gave her own Beyond the Pale speech targeted toward black youth. And awful at the time was that you had black entertainment normalizing the very dysfunctional, the very counterproductive criminal activities that these bills were using as a weapon to mass incarcerate black peoples, particularly young black men and black men in general, to fund these privatized prisons, which people in the penal system could invest in, though it's really a conflict of interest. It's legal for them to invest in them. The same kind that Michael Jordan has invested in. Michael Jordan has invested in these. And so just think, he has these overpriced space looking sneakers, overpriced sneakers that probably didn't cost a good $5 to make. But yet he charges hundreds of dollars for them, right? He charges hundreds of dollars for them, but he promotes them to a demographic he know doggone well cannot afford them. Black people living in poverty, basically. Because that's most of who you going to see walking around in a pair of Jordans. Back in the 90s, people were attacking folks for their Jordans, killing people for cheap tennis shoes that didn't even coordinate well with most things in your wardrobe. You know. So I would say don't support or entertain people that traffic in the souls of men through exploitation and normalizing deviance, because basically society is falling apart as a result of it. This is Stage of the Planet. I'm your host, Warita Webb Bush. Focus on God.